for those first 3 years, right? There's like the way that they are hardwired for 3-ish years is deep connection, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. And they are really focused on the parent or the caregiver and developing that relationship and understanding how the world works through relationship. And I really feel like that is the deep foundation for all of us. And when I see adult clients in my practice, sometimes they'll come in and they'll share these pieces that happen very early that are impacting their lives and their relationships now as adults. And sometimes these people are in their 60s, right?
Mhm.
So this is a long foundation. It's a long time to have that foundation.
Hi, conscious parents. It's Carrie here, and I am here with a little info about raising our mindful kids. I've got some tips and tricks about breaking free of the box and becoming who you are and teaching your kids how to do that along the way. Join us. Hi there, and welcome back. It's Carrie here, and I have a treat for you guys today. I am so excited to connect with Dr. Stephanie Dueger, who is an author, educator, parent coach, and psychotherapist. She is passionate about helping expectant and new parents and their little ones up to age 5 develop healthy, secure, nourishing family relationships. I love her name for her book, Prepared for Parenthood. I'm so excited. I thought I was prepared for parenthood, but I read What to Expect When You're Expecting. Oh my gosh, it just unleashed all of the anxiety and nerves about everything that could go wrong.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Carrie. Yeah, my husband and I were a little older when we had our first child, and I'd spent most of my adult years working with kids and families. And I remember when I used to be a school teacher, one of the parents coming in and saying, "Do you have kids?" And at that time, I didn't. I was in my early 20s. And
Yeah.
she said, "Oh, you, like, you don't get it," essentially. And I was a little
Yeah.
offended by that. I was like, "Oh, I've been studying child development and doing all this stuff and working with kids for such a long time.
Yeah.
I understand some things." And then both my husband and I, despite years of working in the field and being therapists and all that, entered parenthood. I'm a total avid reader, and I read all those books, the What to Expect, the all of the things. And I was so humbled by becoming a parent. It was really a lot more challenging, I think, than I had expected, maybe because we were on the older side and had had years of having a career, and it was just humbling to be like, okay, you're fully in charge 24/7 of this little fully
Yes.
dependent little human. And it wasn't easy. Breastfeeding wasn't easy. Not sleeping wasn't easy. She was a little colicky and that wasn't easy. And it was so eye-opening for me. And so once I got through that and our second child and loved having them both and bringing them into the world and was really realistic about the challenges of it for us. And I know everyone's experience is a little different, but I felt like the parents who were coming to me as a therapist and saying, "Nobody told me it was going to be so hard," right? You have the baby shower and the cute little onesies and the booties, and it's all going to be amazing and fun. And oh my gosh, it's incredible. And yes, that's all true. And except that it's all going to be fun. It's not always all going to be fun. It's very hard as well sometimes. And so I found that I wish that I had some more preparation, despite having many conversations with my therapist husband. Yeah, we were both therapists. We talk a ton. And so I started compiling the most often asked questions in my practice,
Mhm.
as well as the ones that I wish someone had asked me. And then I started putting them together with action items. And that's where I came up with Preparing for Parenthood, 55 Essential Conversations for Couples Becoming Families. And it's just meant to be open the book anywhere and have these thoughtful conversations with your partner. Or if you're a single parent, have these conversations with yourself of, what do I believe? What are my thoughts and values? And then think about how you want to do parenting together. And I really wanted to be clear about not giving advice in this book. So it was more about my understanding that people do it differently everywhere, right? I have my own perspective of being in the world, and it's very different from many people in the world.
Yeah.
And my culture is different, and my background is different, my childhood is different. So everybody comes into parenthood with these backgrounds, and I just wanted to pose questions and then let people go from there based on their own world perspective. So that's how this was born.
I love it so much. I remember when I was getting ready to have my first, we took a class at the hospital and they went over everything that could go wrong in labor and delivery. And it was like that was the only thing that we talked about there was what could go wrong in that moment. And it was like the negative pieces too. It wasn't like, here, try this technique to help you through this part. Try this piece to help you with when that doesn't work. There wasn't any positive pieces to it. It was all of this doom and gloom that they were putting on us. So during that labor and delivery, there was a piece that was a little bit harder. It was harder for us. And I just finally was like, okay, I need the epidural, Dan. I can't think about, oh, husband, I can't think about what to do next. But my friend that had two kids in my second pregnancy, when I was pregnant, she said, you need to go to this doula. You need to take this class. Go try and understand these pieces. And we went and she gave us all of these tools for the labor and delivery. And she worked on the connection between my husband and I. And I was so empowered. I had a mother's blessing before I had her too. So it was like a week before. We didn't know she was coming a month early. So we thought we had time, but it was a week before she came. We had this mother's blessing where I had all of these powerful women that came into my house. We had this beautiful ceremony where they blessed me and they each said a mindful blessing for me and put a bead on a necklace. And then as soon as my water broke, she was a month early, so I was starting to feel that fear. But I grabbed that necklace that these women had created for me, and I could just feel this feeling of peace and love and understanding, and everything's going to be okay. And so, even though that labor and delivery was harder, more intense, and more nervous making,
Mhm.
we had such a wonderful birth for her. And my husband and I were so connected. She ended up going to the NICU, and I was able to deliver her naturally, which was my goal. I had all of these tools and this energy and empowerment. I grabbed my IV bag and walked down into the NICU and was like, I'm ready to nurse her. My husband's, you're walking around? What is this? And he was even empowered. He talked to the NICU nurse and said, right after she was born, it's really important my wife nurse her. It's very important to her and for our baby and to me. And so they brought her in and I got to nurse her right away and have that skin to skin contact that I wanted. And so he was empowered too. All of us were just connected. And so I truly love what you're doing for all of these parents and not thinking on the fear, not thinking of the things that could go wrong, but empowering people and having these conversations early on that we need to have. So I was going to ask you, I was drawn when you were telling your story. Do you feel like there's a piece that you have found for moms in finding our voices?
Yeah, I love that question. And I love the stories that you shared about your different birth and the mother's blessing that you did. We did those as well, and so empowering. And I we ended up having two home births. That was the way that we chose to do things. And fortunately, I was able to do both of those fully at home without needing to be transported. And I
Nice.
know that's not a reality for a lot of people. I wanted to show you, I'm not sure if I don't want to make this tip over, but we made belly casts. I'm gonna tip it
Oh,
up, see if you can
oh,
see the
I
belly
can see the
casts.
wow, those are
There's one for
beautiful.
each of her. And my women friends helped me decorate them. So it was very sweet. And in terms of your question around finding your voice as a birthing parent, and meaning the whole couple needs to find their
Mhm.
voice, but especially whoever's giving birth. I just think it's so important in this day and age where we're living in an information age and you can pretty much Google anything that you want.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll get some great information and maybe you won't. But I feel like it's too easy to get that information. And so we're used to being spoon fed a little bit. I think a lot of times this is how it's going to go. Everybody gives birth this way. A third of women are going to end up having a C-section in this country, and that's still the statistic, higher in some places. And a lot of times that may not need to happen, right? There are a lot of times when it does need to happen, and we're grateful to have those options. They save
Mhm.
lives.
Yeah.
But also sometimes it takes really understanding birth, right? It's like a real understanding of your body. And again, it's different for everybody. Everyone's birth is different. Every baby comes into the world in a different way. And so there's no like better or worse around this. We want healthy
Yeah.
mamas, healthy babies.
Yeah.
And if you can find your voice and at least ask questions, right? So if someone says, okay, you need to do X in your birth, at least be able to ask questions or have somebody there to advocate for you around asking those questions. Like, why does this need to happen? Is there any other way? If not, like what's the protocol here? What's going to happen? Being educated around it and also understanding how the body works in birth and how the baby moves through the birth canal if that's the way the baby comes up. I think is super empowering for birthing parents and helpful for the partner as well. So they might they might be a man, but they should have an idea of what happens in birth, right? And so that they can advocate for their partner who's giving birth. Um, of, hey, have we tried this? Have we tried a different position? And instead of just going the fear route, which is the general way that a lot of people are conditioned into thinking birth is going to be scary and it's going to hurt a lot and it's going to be all of these things. And instead of going that route and focusing on the fear,
Yeah.
focus on what do you hope to have happened? Not that every birth is going to go the way that you hope it will. Babies got their own plan of coming into the world as well, but doing the best that you can to be like, this is my thought process on why I want to try to, for example, have a natural birth, maybe, right? Or this is the reason I'm really choosing not to do it that way because I have a ton of fear and I'm worried about this and that. And I know that if I have this medication, it will help me relax more. So just being really clear about what you're doing and giving voice to it. And again, having those advocates, whether it's a doula or a midwife or a partner, whatever, to share so that if you are in your birthing zone and you're maybe struggling to get your words out, somebody else is speaking for you. So, yeah, I love that question.
Yeah, definitely. That was beautiful. And I'm going to transition a little bit because it came up. You and I were chatting. I was telling you I've been reading some information about a psychologist, a research psychologist, Dr. Lisa Miller. And it was interesting because she had mentioned that our kids, with the research she's finding, our kids are born connected with nature and seeking a connection and an understanding of our world. So they're born open to this, I believe, this spiritual piece of understanding who we are and finding this connection with nature. And you had mentioned that your husband and you both started out as wilderness therapists, and you shared how important your connection is to the wild. And I would love to know, like, how do you believe these two places, like a healthy birth and a healthy earth, are connected? I love that.
Yeah, yeah, I really do believe that the way that we are bringing new humans into the world impacts not just us as a human race, but all the beings on the earth, right? All the animal and plant beings and the earth itself, right? These are all living creatures, and what we do impacts others, right?
Yeah.
And whether it's being thoughtful about recycling or composting or what you eat or whatever it is, knowing why you do that and why you're making those choices and making sure you're making the right choices for you and your family, whatever your values are. And my kind of mission is to help support people to bring in these little conscious humans who are coming into the world
Yeah.
in a very different world than the world that you or I came into, keeps evolving and changing. And we need to be thoughtful. Like the earth is changing quickly and the world that we live in is changing quickly. And so knowing that we're all connected, knowing that we're
Mhm.
connected to each other, that we're connected to the earth and all the other beings on the planet, and potentially off the planet too, who knows? But like having a sense of that and making choices from that place. So for our family, we are very nature-based people. And I grew up like on Sundays we would go for hikes or go to the ocean or
Yeah.
that was our thing that we did. And so I developed a really deep respect for and just appreciation of the beauty that we're so blessed to live in here and why we moved to where we live now, right near the mountains. Just having that sense of connection, I feel like is so important. And so being really, for us, really thoughtful about why why we're doing what we're doing, how we brought our children into the world, how we spend our time together, often in the outdoors. A little less now that our kids are teenagers and they're doing their own things a lot, but it has been a really important piece for us. And so for us, that's our spiritual bent. And it's been fascinating because I think I've spoken with people a lot on my podcast about those early times of little ones in
Yeah.
utero or after they've just been born up to about age 2 or 3, when they still have some connection to wherever they came from before and
Yep.
have whatever thoughts you want around what that looks like. But I always remember one experience. We had an older dog who her time had come and we needed to say goodbye to her. And at that point, our youngest was just under 2 years old. And the vet came to our house and we were saying goodbye. And once she passed, the our little one who was sitting kind of playing by herself a little bit in the corner stopped and looked up and waved and she said bye-bye. And we
Mm.
just were like, oh, like she saw something. She saw our dog's spirit
Wow.
or whatever leave the body. And it was like it was such a beautiful thing and kind of awe-inspiring. Of they really are connected to something else in a way that I think once our brains get more and more developed and more connected up here, we
Mhm.
sometimes lose touch with that, I think. Like has to be a practice to bring it back in, whereas they're, I think, just more naturally connected.
Yes. Yeah, I totally believe that. I love that so much. My son also had similar things when he was small and would see grandparents that he had met when he was a baby. But so that was really cool that had passed over and he
Mhm.
would still connected and would see them. It's interesting because, yeah, it is when they're really young. He was 2, I think, when that happened. But yeah, I love when we're giving them these foundations and these pieces that are helping them to stay connected and to stay having those tools to also ground themselves. For instance, my son in the area, we also live in the same area as you, which is really cool. So we have that access to nature. And although sometimes on a Saturday morning, it can be a struggle to get my sensitive kiddos in their hiking boots and out the door when they just want to like stay inside, stay hibernating, doing their Legos or whatever they're doing that morning.
Mhm.
Once we're out there, my son always he'll raise his hands up and be like, I love this place. And you can just see him get so enthralled with it. My daughter, more so when we're walking down the hill than up. But
That's fair.
yeah, she's always asking you to just keep going downhill. And my husband's, let's just flip the earth for you. sissy, but yeah, so I love that connection. And my son, it's been really empowering for him. We found Cub Scouts to be something really special for his heart and connecting with nature in that way. His favorite thing is getting out and doing the overnight campouts and having friends there and getting to look at the stars and learn how to pitch his tent. And it's been really amazing for him. So I love having that piece. And where we live, it's a big thing in our community. So we're really lucky to have that. So I would
Yeah.
encourage people to check that out. It's been so amazing for our kids and they really love it. But I was going to ask you, shifting again. So you mentioned that there's this foundation of our lives as human beings we lay down from pre-conception to the first 3-ish years. It's interesting. I'm curious about the 3-ish years. If we hope to be conscious parents and raise conscious children, what do you think are some important things that we can do to support this hope?
Mm. Yeah. So my view is if we are consciously choosing to have children, and I know some people just end up having kids and they weren't really planning on it. So this
Mm,
is more about being really thoughtful around, yes, we're planning around this. This is what we're trying to do. This is what we want to do.
mhm,
You're preparing your body, mind, spirit, all of that, mentally, physically, emotionally, probably spiritually as well, to be a home for this little one to grow in and birth this little one and nurture this little one. And then they're really in your orbit for those first 3 years, right? There's like the way that they are hardwired for 3-ish years is deep connection, right?
yeah.
That's what it's all about. And they are really focused on the parent or the caregiver and developing that relationship and understanding how the world works through relationship. And I really feel like that is the deep foundation for all of us. And when I see adult clients in my practice, sometimes they'll come in and they'll share these pieces that happen very early that are impacting their lives and their relationships now as adults. And sometimes these people are in their 60s, right?
Mhm.
So this is a long foundation, it's a long time to have that foundation. And so really getting clear and conscious about how we're doing that with our own little ones. And I feel in order to best support our little ones, we also have to best support ourselves. And that looks different for everybody. So for me, from a psychotherapy background, from as a psychologist, it's like
Yeah.
doing your own work, doing your own deep work, like really finding those places that are hard for you. Oh, I hate conflict, or oh, this is really challenging when my child has a meltdown. Find those places and dig in, right? Figure out why is this so hard for me? What is getting triggered? What is this bringing up for me? And then working with whoever it is, like a professional or maybe your partner or a friend or a clergy person or whoever to help heal those wounds. And for me, given my background at training, that's where I go. But also, there's like the other pieces of nurturing, right? There's the self care pieces that extend beyond digging into your own background, your psychological past. But it's like really taking deep care of yourself and really having enough support, right? So if you have more support, you are likely to do better. It's just how we are wired as human beings. And so when we surround ourselves with other people who, for example, are having children at the same time and going through some of the similar challenges that we might be going through, that can be really helpful,
Mm.
right? It can also highlight, like, hey, I'm not alone,
Yep.
or it can offer us a place to offer support to somebody else, maybe of, oh, I'm actually doing pretty well, and this person seems to be really struggling. How can I help support them?
Yep.
So it builds community. So I really feel like those are the best ways because all of that helps. And again, here's my lens, all of that helps with attachment and bonding. So the attachment is the connection the child has to the parent or caregiver, and bonding is the opposite way. We don't get that from our children, where our job is to give that as the adults, but there's a bonding that can happen. And if you're struggling with that bonding for whatever reason, getting support around that, I feel is super helpful and important so
Mm.
that everybody can have the best family experience.
Okay. I love that so much. I had an episode that worked on inner child healing with Catherine DeMonte, and I'm going to have to match you guys up. I had a follow-up question for you. When I had my daughter, there was 3 months where she wouldn't sleep or nap in her little bassinet, and I had to have her strapped to me in a baby wrap, and that was the only way she would nap. And so I realized there's some healing that I needed and that she needed. I realized there was a grief piece because I had this grief about not having the labor and delivery that I had prepared for. And then I had this healing that I did, and I had studied Reiki. So I would do Reiki on her when she was asleep on me, and I would do Reiki on myself about you're safe, I'm safe. It's okay that you came early. It's okay to sleep in your bassinet. I'm okay. You don't need to be healing me, little one. And I'm giving you strength to sleep on your own. And I found even so that really helped. Then she could sleep on her own. We got to that point. But I've also found like with the pandemic times, I was reading some research about some of the social and emotional development pieces for kiddos and how like the caseloads for speech therapy were so high after 2020 and just the stress that was put on these kids' systems. My daughter had a really hard time leaving me to go to preschool when she was 4, a really hard time going to kindergarten, a really hard time now. I haven't even really slept away from her unless she's been with grandparents. What do you tell people that are still struggling with this connection, especially after this pandemic phase? I feel like there's this little piece for these little ones that we often forget about.
Yeah, I think you hit it spot on there. There's a lot more anxiety in children than we've ever seen in
Mm,
this country. It's happening all around the world, of course, in places where there's war and things like that. But I would say the best part of this is that almost everything can be healed. Not
mm,
everything, but
right.
almost everything. I would say 90 to 95% of things that happen can be healed and healed
Mm,
dramatically. I speak about this with parents of adopted children, right? So they
mm,
come in naturally to a family having
yep.
experienced loss. So you're automatically
Right.
having a child who is going to have grief and loss in their background when
Yes.
sometimes when they're very little. And so really focusing on getting that support to
Mm,
help heal those things, whatever the things are. If you had a baby in the NICU, if you had a challenging birth, if you got separated, there may have been, I've worked with people who have lost a partner or there's been a divorce or something, right? And they're trying to navigate helping their children move through those experiences. And there are so many trained professionals out there who can help with
yes.
that.
Yes.
And there are things that you can do for yourself, like you're saying with the Reiki, like you can
Mhm.
learn those tools to help support these little ones so that they can feel more secure and happier in the world and more in
Yeah.
connection. And I think those pieces are really important. And I always try to tell people the earlier you can do it, the better. As soon as you feel capable of, okay, I can manage this, I can start dealing with this loss or start navigating this hard birth or whatever it was,
Yeah.
do it
Mhm.
because you are giving your child and yourself such a gift moving through that and healing those pieces. It changes the trajectory of lives so that people don't come to a therapist like myself when they're in their 60s, right?
Right.
They're there when
Yeah.
they're 3 years old with their
Mhm.
parent, or the parents come and say, hey, we need support. And sometimes that's hard for people, right? Some people have a hard time saying, I need help, but it's so gratifying because you can heal these pieces and then you can move on. And it's not like it never happened. You remember, it just doesn't have the impact on your life.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for being here today. And I would love for you to tell us the name of your book and your podcast. That's great.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Carrie. So, the name of my book is Preparing for Parenthood: 55 Essential Conversations for Couples Becoming Families. And then the podcast is a little different. It's Prepared for Parenthood. And all of my Instagram, Facebook, website, they're all prepared for parenthood. And so you can find me that way. And I'm so happy to connect with people if they reach out personally. I'll gladly connect with you and send an email back or return a phone call. So please feel free to reach out.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here. Have a great day.
Thanks, Carrie. You too.
Well, that's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning in, Changemakers. This is Carrie. And if you haven't done a review for us, 5 stars and a little few words about what you've enjoyed in our podcast episodes, we would really appreciate it. If you guys would like to ever message me, I would love any questions you have or any feedback at info@hearttoheartlife.com. We also have a brand new website, which we're super excited to share. It's hearttoheartlife.com. Thanks so much for tuning in and happy life, happy times, Changemaker families. Please remember that the information shared on this podcast is educational in nature and does not constitute licensed mental health advice. If you need such advice, you should speak with a licensed professional about your unique situation. Thanks so much, happy listeners.